Hello, welcome to the course PH5BO6 Electrodynamics 2. The contents of this course is taken from Introduction to Electrodynamics by David J. Griffiths. In today's class, we will discuss about Module 2, which is Chapter 9 from Griffiths Electromagnetic Waves. Before moving on to the details of electromagnetic waves, let's talk about waves in general. For simplicity, let's start with one-dimensional wave motion. Take the classic example of wave in a stretched string. Take a string of a finite mass, fix one end to a rigid support. At the loose end, if you apply a jerk, you will find a wave is generated along the string. Now, the wave motion can be characterized by the displacement of the string from the equilibrium position. And as you can make out, the displacement is perpendicular to the wave motion. And this kind of a wave is known as a transverse wave. On the contrary, if the displacement of the particle is along the direction of the wave, then that is known as a longitudinal wave. And there are several definitions for wave motion depending on the nature of the wave. And one of the definitions could be wave motion is a disturbance caused by the particles in a continuous medium executing periodic vibrations about their mean positions, which travels with a definite velocity without any net movement of the medium. The most important aspect is the last part, without any net movement of the medium. So if you look at waves on a stretched string, you will find that the particles on the string or the points on the string is not moving along the string, only the disturbance is moving along the string. Now the question is, how do you characterize a wave motion? To characterize a wave motion, you need something known as a wave function. The variation in the wave function describes the wave motion. In the case of ripples in a water body, you can consider the height profile of the water surface as the wave function. Now, the variation in the height profile gives you the wave motion along the surface of the water. Similarly, for sound waves traveling through air, you can consider the pressure variation as the wave function. In the case of electromagnetic waves, you will learn that the electric field magnetic field variations is the wave function which is used to describe the electromagnetic wave propagation. Now in this case of a stretched string, you can take the displacement from the equilibrium position as the wave function. So depending on the nature of the wave, you can define a wave function which gives you all the properties of the wave motion. Now, how do you represent a wave function? This is the next question. So if I take F as the displacement from the equilibrium position, there are two ways I can represent the variation in F. Either represent the variation in F as a function of time. So this is f of t, or as the function of the distance. So by convention, we take the distance along the z-axis. So this gives you f of z. So this gives you the temporal information of wave motion, and the second case gives you the spatial aspect of the wave motion. As you would have already made out, both these representations are incomplete. In the first case, I am missing the spatial aspect. In the second case, I am missing the temporal aspect. So a complete description of the wave motion requires both the information, the time information as well as the spatial information. So essentially, I am looking at a wave function which is a function of both space as well as time. So I call it as f of zt. Now we need to find a nice form for this wave function. Imagine that the wave is traveling along the plus z direction towards the right with velocity v. Now in time t, the wave travels a distance vt. So if you consider a point at the origin, you will find that after a time t, the same point is going to reappear at a distance vt. Or if you consider a point at the maximum, the same maxima point is going to reappear after a time t at a distance vt. Or you can consider the backward scenario. You choose the displacement at a given position and at a given time. Call it as f of zt. Now this displacement is same as the displacement at a previous position z minus vt at a previous time t minus t, which is equal to 0. Which means I can write the wave function f of zt as f of z minus vt comma 0, or I can call this as another function g of z minus vt. In this function I have both the spatial aspect as well as the temporal aspect. So a function of this form gives me a complete description of wave motion along the z-axis. Now this is the case for plus z direction. If the wave is traveling along the minus z direction, the function becomes g of z plus vt. So in general, f of zt represents a wave of fixed shape traveling in the plus z direction with a fixed velocity v if f of zt can be written as f of z minus vt. Since the function depends on z and t, I can take partial derivative with respect to both the components. Dou f by dou t, if you apply the chain rule, this is minus v f prime zt. F prime is the first derivative. Similarly, dou f by dou z, this is f prime of zt. Moving on to the second derivative, dou square f by dou t square is v square f double prime zt. Double prime is the second derivative. Dou square f by dou z square is f double prime zt. With the second derivative, dou square f by dou t square equal to v square f double prime zt, but f double prime zt is dou square f by dou z square. So you can write dou square f by dou t square equal to v square dou square f by dou z square, or take v square to the left hand side, you get dou square f by dou z square equal to 1 over v square dou square f by dou t square, where f is the wave function, v is the velocity of the wave motion, and this is the one-dimensional wave equation. In the case of three-dimensional, the derivative is replaced by a Laplacian operator which gives you the variation along the three directions. So you can write del square f equal to 1 over v square dou square f by dou t square. Wave equation is a very important equation. Just like the harmonic oscillator equation you have learned in the classical mechanics course, wave equation is also ubiquitous, meaning you will find this literally everywhere in physics, whether it is mechanics or optics or oceanography, radiation physics, telecommunication, everywhere you will encounter this equation. Any motion is governed by Newton's law. We know that from classical mechanics. So let's try to analyze a real wave motion using Newton's law and see whether we are able to arrive at the same result. This kind of will prove the validity of the wave equation as well. So let's take the previous example of waves on a stretched string. So I'm going to take a portion of a stretched string between the point z and z plus delta z. The wave is traveling through the string, so the string is distorted. This shows the distorted portion of a stretched string. And angle of distortion is theta at this end and theta prime is at this end. Let T be the tension on the string. The string is pulled towards each end. So T is towards the right direction here towards the left direction here. Now what is the forces? What are the forces acting on this portion of the string? So tension is a force. Since it is at an arbitrary angle, I can decompose this into two perpendicular components. I have a horizontal component t cos theta prime and a vertical component t sin theta prime. Similarly, here the horizontal component is t cos theta and the vertical component is t sin theta. Since this is in the downward direction, by convention I take it as minus t sin theta. As I mentioned in the definition of wave motion, there is no net movement of the medium, meaning the string is not moving along the horizontal direction. So t cos theta prime and t cos theta, both these horizontal components cancel, and the net force or the net transverse force comes from only the sin theta component. So I can write the net force acting on this segment delta F equal to t sin theta prime minus t sin theta. If the distortion is small, then the value of theta and theta prime is going to be negligible. So in that case, I can approximate sin theta with tan theta. Because you know, when theta equal to 0, both sin theta and tan theta are 0. So delta F is approximated as t tan theta prime minus tan theta. Now tan theta gives the slope of the function at a given point. So tan theta prime gives you slope at the point z plus delta z. This is dou f by dou z at z plus delta z. Similarly, tan theta gives you dou f by dou z at z. This can be written as t into dou square f by dou z square into delta z. Imagine that a delta z cancel, then this gives you a product of t and dou f by dou z, which is similar to the left hand side. From Newton's second law, we know that force is nothing but mass into acceleration. If mu is mass per unit length, and length of the segment is delta z, then mu into delta z is the mass. F is the displacement. Second derivative of displacement gives you acceleration. So force can be written as mu delta z dou square f by dou t square. You have two expressions for the force. You can equate these two and write t into dou square f by dou z square delta z equal to mu into delta z dou square f by dou t square. Delta z is common, cancel that, and rearrange the terms. You get dou square f by dou z square equal to mu over t dou square f by dou t square. You can write this in the form of the standard equation dou square f by dou z square equal to 1 over v square dou square f by dou t square, where v is nothing but square root of t over mu. And let's check whether this expression is correct. You will find that when the tension on the string increases, the velocity increases, so velocity is proportional. And when the mass of the string increases, the velocity decreases. This is true not just for a stretched string, for any medium in general. So if you take propagation of sound waves through a metal, you will get a similar equation where the numerator is related to elasticity of the medium and the denominator is related to density of the medium. So this is a generic form of the equation. In any case, using Newton's second law, we arrive at the same wave equation. So it shows that this equation is general and is valid for any wave motion. When I say a wave, what is the picture coming into your mind? Or if I ask you to draw a waveform, what is the waveform you are going to draw? In 9 out of 10 cases, you will draw a picture like this, right? This is known as a sinusoidal wave. where the wave function is a sinusoidal function. Sinusoidal means a cosine function or a sine function. So a sinusoidal wave of this sort can be represented by a wave function f of zt equal to a cos k into z minus vt plus delta. So first thing, it is a function of both z and t. This is z minus vt, meaning the wave is traveling along the plus z direction. If it is along the minus z direction, it will be z plus vt. Now, before going into the details of the function, let's ask this question. When I ask you to draw a wave function, why do you draw a sinusoidal wave? You could have drawn a square wave, like in digital electronics, you very frequently encounter with a square wave. Or in the function generator in your lab, you would have seen a triangular wave. Why are we not considering any of this? Why is it that a fundamental form of the waveform is always sinusoidal? What's the reason for that? The answer for this question is slightly mathematical. If you recollect the Fourier theorem from your mathematics course, there you had learned that a function, however complicated it is, as long as it is finite, single valued and periodic, you can represent it as a series summation of sine and cosine function. Which means a waveform, however complicated it is, as long as it is periodic, finite and single valued, you can represent it using sine and cosine waves or sinusoidal waves. That is why the fundamental form of wave is always taken as sinusoidal, because from the sinusoidal wave you can construct any other waveform. Now coming back to the wave function, in this equation, A is known as amplitude, which is maximum displacement. So this distance is the amplitude A. The argument of the cosine function is known as phase, and this constant delta is known as phase constant. Sometimes this is known as the initial phase. Its value varies from 0 to 2 pi. K is a constant known as wave number, which is related to the wavelength by 2 pi by k. As I said, sinusoidal function means sine or cosine. So in this place, you can also write it as a sine kz minus vt plus delta, because the phase difference between sine and cosine is just pi by 2. So in this expression, if I put delta as pi by 2, you get a corresponding sine function. So it doesn't matter, these are interchangeable. This is the form of a sinusoidal wave. It has a periodic vibration. So if you take a point, after some time the same point is going to get repeated. Now this is known as one complete cycle. In terms of radians, this corresponds to 2 pi. Or if you take this maxima point, after 2 pi radians, the same point is going to get repeated. The distance traveled in one complete cycle is the wavelength lambda, and the time taken for one complete cycle is known as the time period t. If v is the velocity of wave motion, we know that time is nothing but distance by velocity. So you can write t equal to lambda by v. You can divide and multiply with 2 pi. So 2 pi by lambda is k. So lambda by 2 pi is 1 over k. So t equal to 2 pi divided by kb. If you take inverse of the time period, this gives you frequency, which is nothing but number of waves traveling through a particular point per unit time. Nu equal to kv by 2 pi, or from this definition you can write it as v by lambda. You can also write frequency in terms of its angular counterpart, angular frequency, which is nothing but 2 pi into linear frequency. So omega equal to k into v. The standard form of the wave function is always written in terms of angular frequency. So here the phase term, you can expand this. This becomes kz minus kvt. kv is nothing but omega. So you can write a wave traveling to the right along the plus z direction as a cos kz minus omega t plus delta. Similarly, a wave traveling towards the left along the minus z direction. This is a cos kz plus omega t minus delta. Now, what is the physical meaning of the phase constant delta? So look at the point z equal to vt minus delta by k. So in this expression, instead of z, you can plug in this value. You find that the phase term becomes 0 at this point. So cos 0 equal to 1. So at this point, the displacement attains the maximum value, which is the amplitude A. So this point is known as the central maximum point. If delta equal to 0, the central maxima corresponds with the origin t equal to 0, which means delta by k is the distance by which the central maxima and therefore the entire wave is delayed. Since we are talking about wave propagation along the plus z direction, the delay is towards the minus z direction. On the other hand, if you take wave propagation towards the minus z direction, the delay delta by k will be towards the plus z direction. So delta by k gives you the delay in the wave motion. Now if you compare these two equations, wave traveling to the right and wave traveling to the left, we know that cosine function is an even function. Cos minus theta is same as cos theta. So here in the argument, if I put a minus sign here, the value doesn't change. So this I can write as a cos minus kz minus omega t plus delta. So this is the new equation for a wave traveling to the left. Compare this equation and this equation. Everything looks exactly the same except for the k term. Here k is positive, here k is negative. So just by switching the sign of k, you get a wave traveling in the opposite direction. So k is related to the propagation direction of the wave. Its sign gives you the direction of propagation. That's why k is known as propagation constant. In the case of three-dimensional wave motion, k becomes a vector. So you call it as the propagation vector. So k is an important parameter when you talk about wave motion of any sort. In vector analysis, we have learned an important formula known as Euler's formula, where you can write a complex function e to the power I theta as cos theta plus I sin theta. In our wave function, we have a sinusoidal function. So instead of writing it as a cosine function, look here in this expression, cos term is the real part and sin term is the imaginary part. So instead of writing a cosine function explicitly, I can also write it as real part of this complex function, right? Real part gives you the cosine part. So instead of this, I can write real part of the complex function. So the same expression using Euler's formula, I can write f of z equal to real part of a e to the power I kz minus omega t plus delta. If you expand this exponential term, you get cos kz minus omega t plus delta plus I sin kz minus omega t plus delta. You are considering only the real part. So this corresponds to the previous equation a cos kz minus omega t plus delta. Now you may be wondering, why do we need this kind of a complex notation? We already have a nice form for the wave function. The reason is in wave mechanics, often you have to do mathematical manipulation of the wave function. If you recollect the wave equation, we have a second derivative of the wave equation. So you have to do the differential of cosine function or sine function. Similarly, if you want to solve the wave equation, you need to integrate. So you have to do integration also. So differential of sine is cos and differential of cos is minus sine. Similarly, integral of sine is minus cos and integral of cos is sine. You have to keep switching between sine and cosine function. On the other hand, if you look at the exponential function, the differential of an exponential function is exponential. Similarly, integral of exponential is also integral. Right? So mathematically, it's much more convenient for me to operate with exponentials than sine and cosine function. That's the reason why I resort to a complex notation of this sort. It makes my mathematical analysis much more easy. So instead of writing like this, I can also take a complex wave function. So this is the symbol for the complex notation. So complex function f complex zt equal to a complex e to the power I kz minus omega t, where a complex is a e to the power I delta. This is the complex amplitude. As always, the wave function is the real part of the complex function. So you can write the real function f of zt equal to real part of complex f of zt. You need to remember one important thing. We are talking about real waves, like waves on a stretch string, waves on a water body, sound waves traveling through air. All these are real waves. So a function which represents such a real wave has to be real, because anything physically measurable is a real quantity. Suppose you make a measurement of your weight, you get a real value. You make a measurement of your height, you get a real value. You never get an imaginary value, right? So anything physically measurable, anything real has to be represented by a real function. So whenever we talk about wave motion, we have to use a real function. But for mathematical convenience, sometimes we write the complex notation. So for all mathematical manipulations, you can use the complex notation. But when we want to talk about the real properties of the wave, then you can take only the real part of the complex notation. Okay, so you have to remember this in mind. Now, once you write the wave function in the complex notation, if you want to combine two sinusoidal waves, you simply add the corresponding complex wave functions and finally take the real part. You will have to do this when you talk about superposition of waves. So if you have two real wave functions f1 and f2, you want to combine them, you can use the complex notation. So f1 is real part of complex f1. F2 is real part of complex F2, so you can add the real parts, which is equal to real part of F1 plus F2, which is equal to real part of the F3 complex, where F3 complex is A1 complex e to the power I kz minus omega t plus A2 complex e to the power I kz minus omega t, which is nothing but A3 complex e to the power I kz minus omega t, where A3 complex is A1 complex plus A2 complex. So you can do all this mathematical manipulation. At the end of the day, remember the wave function, the real wave function is a real quantity. So you can write it as the real part of the complex notation. So F3 zt finally becomes A3 cos kz minus omega t plus delta t. So if you are taking superposition of two individual waves of same frequency and wave number, the combined wave also will have the same frequency and wave number. So that's about the basics of sinusoidal waves. In the next class, we will talk about boundary conditions pertaining to reflections and transmission. Thank you.